starting these is usually the most awkward part for me. Trying to figure out kind of how to transition between nothing and then into a specific topic, right? But it's always like anything else. Once you start running or moving one foot in front of the other, you'll eventually get to the running phase, hopefully. But anyways, hi ladies and gentlemen, how's things going? It's been a while since the last upload, right? I feel like I almost need to address it, but it's very likely I don't. I'm just far more aware of my own upload schedule. But in my defense, I mean, the other podcast is religiously on time, so props for me on that, right? Maybe. Anyways, I'll change the topic. So I was I was thinking about, like, every once in a while, I like to kind of sit back and reflect on different time periods of my life and different things that have kind of occurred and just different things that pop into my head, right? A lot of that, honestly, for me, especially assessing the last year of progress, really happens on my birthday. That's kind of like a tradition of mine. But it's always good to touch base on like who you are, right? What your decisions are and why you did what you did, and just find out like why or where you found yourself to be in. Is that proper English? Probably not. It's good to think about kind of what got you to where you are now, for many reasons, right? Whether or not you're happy with where you are, or whether or not you're content with where you are. I think it's always good to figure out what the pros and cons were of the choices that you've made. And so one of the things I was thinking about, it came to mind, and I thought this was maybe a good thing to bring up, was one of the best tips I can probably give you that doesn't necessarily apply to one specific career or one specific job. This is a very general, you see what I did there? This is a very general tip I can give you about work and how to progress in work. And honestly, it's a simple one. And once I tell you that, you're going to be like, okay, well, this was a waste of my time. Next podcast. But this is a short one, so stay with me here. So one of the things that I've thought about in my past is, how opportunities have presented themselves. And there's different times and different places where opportunities have just presented themselves, and I wasn't just expecting them to present themselves. And that's going to happen in your life, right? If you're making somewhat good choices, you're going to be in a position where you have opportunities allotted to you because you're making the right choices, right? But one of the things that I think has really helped me cinch a couple of jobs, as well as kind of progressed in my career, is honestly something as simple as just being useful. So I was interviewing for a job when I was a young man. I was going for this job that honestly I had zero experience for. And quite frankly, the people that were in those positions were usually double, if not, I want to say triple my age. And that's kind of jacked to hear. But I was very young at the time. But anyways, I digress. One of the things that I was interviewing for it, and just because I was always very personable and very polite and very professional in my demeanor in any of my careers, it was easy for people to kind of maybe think about me in those certain positions, right? So, anyways, I interviewed for this job that, quite frankly, I had no experience to do. And I interviewed with this woman, and she was very polite and very nice. And the interview went fine. I mean, it's hard to interview for something that you've never done before. Like, if I would have taken this job, I would have literally had to been trained on everything, because this was a completely new pathway into something completely new that I had never done in the past. And it was, I went into it with good spirits. Probably, what's that saying that's it's a popular one? Ignorance is blind, or no, ignorance is, what is the saying? You know which one I'm talking about. It's a pretty popular one. So, ignorance is bliss. So, I went into it very ignorant, about it, but sometimes it is better to go into things with a good positive energy than it is to doubt yourself and go into it with hesitation. But back to the story. So I interviewed with this woman. Everything went fine. It was a fairly short interview. I mean, it's hard to interview once again for something you've never done or have zero experience in. But long story short, in the middle of the interview, she had like this. I don't know what you even call it. I know women that know stuff will know what this is, but she had like a blanket, I would call it, I guess, like over herself, like over her legs and stuff. And at the time, like, she would turn to her desk, which was kind of behind her, to grab something, and she had like this screw that was kind of half-assed installed in her desk, on the underside of the desk. So long story short, the screw was protruding like a quarter inch off of the bottom of the desk, and it was just this leftover screw. Like, it's one of those keyboard extensions that would slide in and out of the bottom of a desk, and I guess the maintenance people or whoever took care of it never undid the screw. And let me rephrase that. They removed the slide out desk thing because maybe she didn't want it. I have no idea. And for some reason, they probably tried putting the screws back in case somebody ever... I have no idea what they were trying to do, to be honest with you. It's kind of stupid they did it. But there was a half-ass screw left out. And like it would catch her blanket thing, whatever it's called. It would catch it. And like, she made a mention of it. She was like, every time, like, it just, this thing catches. And I quickly looked under the table, and I was like, the screw? I was like, you want me to remove that? And she's just like, looked at me, and she's like, I mean, can you? And I was like, yeah, it's not that big of a deal. I can take care of it if you want. And she was like, okay, yeah, if you can. And I was like, all right, cool. I got to go. I did this interview in... Okay, maybe I should give you more details. I was working already in a job in that place already, and so then I went to do an interview during my lunch break, and then I would have to go back to work. So I went back and said, I'll take care of this after kind of I get back to work. And so she was like, okay, cool. And the interview went fine. I mean, it was basic interviews. I mean, like I said, there's nothing she could ask me about pertinent information about the job because I had zero experience doing the job. So at some point, I went back and relieved the person that was covering my area. And they... Later on, I was like, oh, shoot, I got to do that, right? So I had some tools at work, and I ran back to that area when I had a chance, and she wasn't around. I think they had gone for lunch or something. So I just kind of went into her office real quick, took out the screw, and then just kind of left it on her desk and just left, right? And I think that was basically her deciding factor for it, to be honest with you, because you don't give a snot-nosed young kid a position like that. It's a risk. It's a tremendous risk to have given me that position because there is quite a bit of responsibility in that position. And to give it to somebody who's barely of age was a huge risk. But the screw saved or gave me that position. There's a joke in there somewhere, by the way. Anyways, the removing the screw gave me that position. And the reasoning why, and her logic that she told me later on, was that, that job requires a certain level of attention to detail. And the fact that, I stuck with it, I told her that I was going to do it, I promised her that I would take care of it, I did, and I even took care of it without even her being there. She didn't have to worry about it, was, I think, a big factor for her. So, long story short, I think one of the points I want to make is be the young, dumb version of me that was in there and trying to probably apply for something that was definitely out of my league, definitely out of my skill set at the time. Not my abilities, because I ended up doing the job quite well, and I stuck around far longer than anybody had done previously to me. And these were all people with far more experience, right? It was a high-pressure job because of the nature of the job. But long story short, that's going to be my new thing on this podcast, long story short. Anyways, I digress. One is definitely kind of shoot for things. You never know. Sometimes things will click. And if you doubt yourself, if you have angst about your abilities, I mean, quite frankly, honestly, guys, unless you're going to be like a physicist or a doctor or any of this other stuff, most stuff can be learned. Oh, okay, that's a dumb oxymoron. Everything can be learned, right? But most stuff you can learn on the job. Now, being a doctor just requires you to learn a lot for a long time, right? But it's still anything and everybody can do it. You just have to apply yourself. But my point to it is do shoot for things that maybe you never thought you could do. It's always something you should attempt to do no matter what. But I guess the real tip, the real nugget in this story is more that you need to be useful. If you can be the most useful person in your area, in your department, it will be noticed. And you can't expect it to be noticed right away. You can't expect it to be noticed and receive praise or promotions for it right away. But if you can outgrind everybody else, if you can continue to be the useful person with the good attitude that wants to progress, you will get further than everybody else. I promise you that. And I don't say those things lightly, because ultimately, let's be real honest. There are some shitty bosses. There are some great bosses. But even the shitty ones can notice that some people just work harder than others. And that probably goes back to having pride in not just yourself, but the work represents you. The work is an extension of you. And if you're putting half-hearted work out, it does show. And it does reflect on you, because it's you putting that out, right? Like, there's a big difference between my work, right? But also some of you that follow my like Instagram, my social media, and you see all the kind of artsy shit projects, whatever you want to call them, the woodworking, the whatevers, right? Some of you that know me know that I am hypercritical of myself. Like, I am incredibly critical of myself. And these are things that I'm diving into that I've never done before, right? But I look at every single one of my projects, and don't get me wrong, I'm proud of them, almost like my own little children, right? But at the same time, I'm hyper aware of my mistakes and what each project has a mistake, and every project has a varying amount of mistakes, and I'm quite aware of them. And it takes a lot for me not to point them out automatically, because it's a way of anyways, it's not a coping mechanism, but it's a way of, pointing out the fact that things aren't perfect. But I think that's something that creative people kind of deal with, I think, at times, because I hear that's a thing with woodworkers. But anyways, I digress. That's going to be a thing on this podcast too. Anyways, so ultimately, shoot for things that you never thought you can get. Definitely be the most useful person in your area. It comes off, and it'll be appreciated. Maybe you won't get daily, weekly praise, but it'll be appreciated. You will be noticed. And there does come some sacrifice with that, right? Like, you will be looked at as kind of the guy's kissing ass, even though you shouldn't be. And that, I guess, leads to my third point. It is a very fine line between being useful and being walked all over. Realize the difference, and realize the difference between the intentions of what somebody's trying to have you do. And that's a topic for another podcast, intent and the words, the meaning behind the words, right? But that's not something we'll cover today. Today's going to be an easy, quick one. But that's a kind of little story I wanted to tell you guys, because if you can kind of figure out and ride those waves, right? I have this analogy that you'll hear a lot, is about riding waves and being able to maneuver things and worry and ride the wave of like highs and lows, but stay on that surfboard, right? If you can do that, those will pay off for you, no matter if you're like a janitor or if you're a freaking lawyer. Like, these are things that will pay off for you no matter what. So, food for thought, something to kind of give you some something to kind of chew on. Considering I thought about this earlier today, because I was thinking about certain pathways that my career has kind of taken, and these are one of those things that I think you or anybody around you can focus on and really, if you can apply it, right? Because it is hard to kind of work and want to outwork everybody around you, but if you can apply it and you can be the useful person in the office who's doing things with a positive attitude and is willing to try to do things and learn new things and apply themselves, opportunities will show. And it won't just be maybe from your immediate boss. It'll likely be from their bosses or their boss's bosses. You never know kind of where life takes you. And it's always better having a better attitude and being open to things more than it is having a bitter, angry attitude. People see that. And as much as you think as a bitter person that you're covering that up, people can feel it. So that's kind of my thoughts for today, guys. Hopefully, this is a little different feel, mood, kind of style. I think these segments are ever evolving, and they're not all going to be me ranting at the top of my lungs about things that are irritating me, or it's not all going to be mind-numbingly breaking philosophical discussions about life or whatever. Sometimes it's just going to be little tidbits, and some of these nuggets are things that, whether or not, once again, you're focusing on your career right now, or whether or not you're focusing on whatever, you can apply these nuggets. Just think about them deeply enough. Anyways, I need to go get some dinner. So we'll talk soon.